I should have told her who I was before we climbed those steps. That's the mistake that keeps replaying in my head. Not the firing, not the scandal, not even the money. The moment I regret is the look on my daughter's face when that woman stepped on her card. You have to understand something about me. I never wanted attention. I built the company from nothing, and then I stepped away when my wife got sick. Grief makes you disappear from your own life. That night in Aspen, the snow was falling thick and quiet outside. The Aspen Crown Hotel. Emma's hand was tucked into mine. She was wearing the red velvet dress her mom had picked out before the diagnosis. 16 months ago, before hospitals, before oxygen tubes, before silence. She held that cream envelope like it mattered more than the building. "Dad," she whispered, looking up at the glowing windows. "They're still helping the kids, right?" I swallowed. "They are." I hadn't told her the board had been running things without me, that I hadn't attended a meeting in 8 months, that I'd convinced myself distance was protection. We climbed the steps. That's when I saw her, Isabella Vaughn, sharp blazer, perfect posture, clipboard pressed to her chest like armor. She didn't smile. She assessed. "This is a private event," she said before we reached the door. I handed her the invitation with my name embossed in gold. She didn't take it. Her eyes flicked to my shoes. "Wet from snow. Not polished enough. I'm going to ask you to step back." Emma squeezed the envelope tighter, and in that second, I felt something shift. Not anger, something colder, because I realized she didn't see us. She saw a man who didn't belong, and I let her believe it. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was staying quiet. I could have ended it in 5 seconds. One sentence, one name, one phone call. But Emma was watching me, and I didn't want her to learn that power solves humiliation. So I said calmly, "We do have an invitation." Isabella didn't even glance at it this time. "That name isn't on the updated registry." Updated, like my wife's foundation had been rebranded, while I was still learning how to sleep alone. I felt Emma shift closer to me. Her fingers were cold through the envelope. "Dad, it's okay," she whispered. It wasn't, but the part that hurt wasn't the rejection. It was the way Isabella looked at us. Not cruel, not even angry, just dismissive, like we were background noise interrupting something important. She stepped forward and touched my arm, firm, corrective. The way you guide someone who wandered somewhere they shouldn't be. My shoe slipped slightly on the wet granite. Emma gasped. That tiny sound broke something inside me. The envelope fell from her hand. It opened when it hit the stone. Her glitter-covered card slid into a shallow puddle of snowmelt, purple ink bleeding, gold glitter smearing, for the kids dissolving under a polished heel. Isabella stepped forward and crushed the corner without looking down. It was a small sound. Soft. Final. Emma didn't cry. She just stared at it. "My mom made that," she said quietly. And something in Isabella's face twitched. Not guilt. Irritation. "I'm sorry for your loss," she replied. But she wasn't. Not really. "Security?" she called as if we were intruders. And that's when I felt it. Not grief, not embarrassment. Something colder. Composed. Emma bent down and tried to pick up the card, her small fingers shaking. I crouched beside her. "Hold this," I said gently. She pressed it to her chest like it was fragile glass. I stood, straightened my jacket, looked Isabella directly in the eyes. "My name," I said evenly, "is Daniel Hayes." She blinked. Still nothing. And that's when I realized she had no idea who she had just stepped on. I should have walked away. That would have been easier. Take Emma home, make pancakes, pretend the world hadn't just reduced her mother to a moving angle. But she had said it, softly, under her breath. "The dead mother angle is very moving." Emma heard it. I saw her face go still. Not confused, not hurt. Still, that stillness is what broke me. I've negotiated billion-dollar deals without raising my voice. I've dismantled competitors without losing composure. But nothing prepares you for someone minimizing the memory of the woman you loved, or the mother your child lost. I stood up slowly. "Emma," I said gently, "hold the card for me." She nodded. Her small fingers clutched it against her red dress like armor. I turned back to Isabella, and this time I didn't lower my voice. "My name is Daniel Hayes." She tilted her head again, impatient. "I understand that's what you're claiming." Claiming. That word landed differently. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. I founded North River Holdings 22 years ago. I own 71% of the parent equity funding this foundation, including this building. The snow kept falling between us. She didn't move. So I added quietly, "including your salary." That's when her expression shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. Her clipboard lowered half an inch. "You've been on extended leave," she said carefully. I was grieving, I replied. There's a difference. I held the phone out to her. Call Richard Caldwell, your board chair. He's inside. She hesitated, took the phone like it might burn her. And when she looked at the screen, I watched the color leave her face. 3 missed calls from him. And a text. Daniel, I understand you're at the door. Please come in immediately. The silence between us thickened. For the first time, she wasn't in control, and neither was I. Because now I had to decide something much harder than revealing my name. I had to decide what kind of man Emma would see me become next. Power's easy. Dignity is harder. I could have humiliated her the way she humiliated us. I could have raised my voice, pointed, made sure every guest inside saw her fall from control to apology. But Emma was standing beside me, and she was watching my face. That mattered more than revenge. Isabella handed my phone back slowly. Her fingers weren't steady anymore. Behind the glass doors I saw movement, guests turning, phones lifting subtly at hip level. People sense when a room shifts. The door opened. Mr. Hayes? Richard Caldwell stepped out into the snow. Tuxedo crisp, breath visible in the cold. He looked from me, to Emma, to the wet card in her hands. Something in his expression hardened. Please, he said carefully, come inside. Inside. The word landed heavy. Isabella stepped aside, not dramatically, just one measured step. I didn't look at her when we walked past, but I felt her eyes on me, felt the weight of calculation behind them. The lobby was warm, too warm, crystal chandeliers, amber lighting, expensive perfume in the air, and something else, absence. I stopped in the center of the marble floor. Emma's hand tightened in mine. Dad, she whispered. I looked at the north wall. For 11 years, that wall held photographs. Children at graduations, families in new apartments, smiling faces from transitional housing programs. Eleanor insisted on that wall. It's not about donors, she used to say. It's about the kids seeing themselves matter. The wall was empty. In its place are framed logos, 4 sizes of corporate branding under glass. My chest went tight. Not with grief, with recognition. This wasn't just about a door, or a card, or one CEO's arrogance. This was about something being quietly rewritten while I stayed away. Richard leaned closer. Daniel, let's talk privately. I shook my head slowly. I've been private for 8 months. My voice was calm, too calm. I think we talk here. And that's when the room went completely silent. I never liked public speeches. Eleanor did. She could stand in front of 500 donors and make them feel like they were sitting at her kitchen table. I used to stand in the back and watch her, proud, quiet, certain the work was safe in her hands. That night, the kitchen table was gone, and all I saw were logos. I felt Emma shift beside me. 300 people were staring now, some pretending not to, some recording openly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My name is Daniel Hayes, I said. The room tightened around it. I founded North River Holdings. My wife built this foundation from a folding table in our basement. Tonight is held in her name. I paused. My daughter made a card to bring here. Emma looked up at me, still holding it against her chest. It was stepped on at the entrance. No anger in my tone. That made it worse. I turned toward the wall. I would like someone to explain why the photographs of the children we serve have been removed. Silence. Not confused silence. Guilty silence. Across the room I saw Charles Ostro, managing director, new hire, 18 months ago. He shifted in his chair. Richard cleared his throat. Daniel, let's not do this here. Where would you prefer? I asked gently, because this wasn't emotion. This was clarity. Emma tugged my sleeve slightly. Dad, are we in trouble? That question hurt more than anything else. I crouched beside her. No, I said softly. We're fixing something. She nodded. Like that made sense. When I stood again, I felt something settle inside me. For 8 months, I thought staying away protected her. Protected the foundation. Protected myself from breaking completely. I was wrong. Absence isn't protection. It's permission. And I had accidentally given permission to people who cared more about branding than children. I looked directly at Richard. I want the financial reports now. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about disrespect. It was about theft. The third mistake was thinking this was only about money. It wasn't. It was about Eleanor, about what she believed in, and about the way I had let strangers reshape her name while I was still trying to survive without her. Richard's jaw tightened. Daniel, he said quietly, stepping closer. This isn't the right time. When is? I asked. Across the room, Charles stood up. Smooth smile. Perfect tuxedo. Perfect composure. The reports are clean, he said. We've increased donor visibility, corporate alignment. And remove the children, I cut in. He hesitated, only a second, but I saw it, that flicker of irritation. Visibility funds impact, he replied. Emma squeezed my hand again. She was listening. I had to choose my next words carefully. You know what funds impact? I said calmly. Trust. Silence. Then Isabella's voice. Soft. Controlled. They were temporary adjustments. I turned toward her. For the first time, she didn't look like armor. She looked young and suddenly unsure. Temporary? I repeated. She swallowed. The board voted. They felt the imagery was emotionally manipulative. There it was again. Emotion is weakness. I felt something warm rise in my chest. Not rage, conviction. Good, I said evenly. It should be. That landed harder than shouting would have. Children sleeping in cars should manipulate you, I continued. A mother choosing between rent and groceries should disturb you. My voice didn't break, but I felt it strain. I built a company, so my wife could build something that made people uncomfortable enough to care. I looked at Isabella. Did you know her? She shook her head slowly. No. That's the problem. She dropped her gaze, and in that moment, something shifted. Not in the room, in her. A crack in certainty, a human pause. Charles stepped forward again. This is becoming inappropriate. No, I replied quietly. It's becoming honest. And that's when I saw the final numbers on the tablet Richard was holding. Consulting fees, executive bonuses, marketing expansions. I did the math in seconds. Not theft, worse. Priorities. And I realized the real fight hadn't even started yet. I didn't expect her to follow me. That was the fourth surprise of the night. After I handed the tablet back to Richard and told him we'd be conducting a full review in the morning, I walked Emma toward the side hallway. I needed air, space, 10 seconds to breathe without 300 eyes measuring my grief. Dad, Emma whispered, are they mad at you? Maybe, I said softly, but that's okay. She nodded like she was memorizing that. We stopped near a tall window overlooking the snow-covered courtyard. I crouched down and fixed the corner of her card where the glitter had smeared. I'm sorry, I told her. For what? For not being here sooner. She studied my face like she was checking if that was true. Before she could answer, I heard heels behind us. Not rushed, careful. Isabella, I owe you an apology, she said. No clipboard now, no armor, just a woman standing too straight because she didn't know what to do with her hands. I stood slowly. You owe my daughter one, I replied. She swallowed and crouched to Emma's height. I stepped on something important, she said quietly. I'm sorry. Emma looked at her for a long second. It's okay, she said. It wasn't, but children forgive faster than adults. Isabella stood again, and for the first time her voice softened around me. I didn't know who you were. That wasn't the issue, I said. I know. There it was. Not defensiveness, recognition. The snow outside reflected light against the glass, illuminating her face. I noticed something I hadn't before. Exhaustion behind the precision. You've built something powerful, she said carefully. I was trying to protect it. From what? From becoming sentimental instead of sustainable. The word sentimental lingered between us. Eleanor used to say sustainability without heart becomes machinery. I watched Isabella closely. She wasn't cold. She was afraid of chaos. I recognized that fear, because I'd been hiding from it too. And for the first time that night, the tension between us didn't feel like a battle. It felt like misunderstanding, which is somehow more dangerous, because misunderstandings can become something else entirely. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that shift. I should have ended the conversation there, accepted the apology, taken Emma home, let the board handle the numbers. But Isabella didn't walk away. Neither did I. Emma was kneeling by the window, tracing little circles in the fog on the glass. For the first time that night, she looked calm. Isabella stood beside me, not quite touching, not quite distant. I wasn't trying to erase your wife, she said quietly. Her voice had changed, less polished, more human. I know what it's like to build something and watch people dismantle it. When you blink, that caught me. You do? She nodded once. My father's company collapsed when I was 19. Employees blamed him. Investors sued. He had a stroke 6 months later. There it was. The fear, not of emotion, of loss. I learned early, she continued, that if you don't harden things, they get torn apart. I studied her profile, the tension in her jaw, the way she kept her hands clasped like she didn't trust them to move. You hardened the wrong thing, I said gently. Her eyes lifted to mine, not defensive, searching. And you disappeared, she replied. That one landed. She wasn't wrong. I had left the foundation in their hands and called it grief. Called it survival. But survival without leadership creates a vacuum, and vacuums get filled. Emma turned suddenly. Dad, can we put Mommy's card on the wall? The wall. The empty one. I felt my throat tighten. Isabella looked toward it too. That would be unconventional, she murmured automatically. Then she caught herself. A small, almost embarrassed smile touched her lips. But maybe that's the point. For a split second, I saw something else in her eyes. Not calculation. Curiosity. About me. About how I would respond. And I realized something that unsettled me more than the board politics. I wasn't just angry at her anymore. I was noticing her. The way her voice softened around Emma. The way she listened without interrupting. That was dangerous. Because attraction in the middle of conflict is messy, and I had promised myself I would never blur lines again. Yet standing there beside her watching snow fall in silence, I felt the first crack in that promise. I shouldn't have looked at her the way I did. Not there. Not with my wife's name printed on the banner behind us. But when Isabella smiled at Emma, hesitant, unsure, almost shy, something shifted in my chest that had nothing to do with the foundation. It scared me. Attraction after loss feels like betrayal. Emma ran ahead toward the empty wall. Can we tape it, Dad? She called. I nodded, then glanced at Isabella. Do you have tape? She let out a soft breath that almost sounded like a laugh. I manage a $6 million gala. I think I can find tape. She walked away quickly, and I watched her go. That was my second mistake of the night, because I wasn't watching her as a CEO anymore. I was watching her as a woman. She came back with a small roll from behind the check-in desk. When she handed it to me, our fingers brushed. Brief, accidental, electric. I pulled back first. Coward! Emma carefully pressed the card against the center of the marble wall. It looked small there, fragile, purple ink slightly blurred, glitter uneven. But it glowed. People nearby began to notice. Whispers started. Phones tilted again. One by one, guests stepped closer. A woman in a silver dress murmured, "That's what this used to feel like." Isabella heard it too. I saw something change in her expression. Not defeat, realization. "This will make the board uncomfortable," she said quietly. "Good," I replied. She looked at me then, not challenging, measuring. "You're coming back, aren't you?" It wasn't about authority. It was about presence. I hesitated. Grief is easier when you don't re-enter the room that built it. I don't know, I admitted. Her voice softened. It matters when you're here. That wasn't flirtation. It was truth. And somehow that felt more intimate. For a second, the room faded. Just snow outside. Emma smiling at the wall. Isabella standing close enough that I could feel the warmth from her shoulder. And then Charles's voice cut through it. If this becomes a spectacle, donors will walk. The tension snapped back into place. I looked at him, then at Isabella. Because now the choice wasn't just about leadership. It was about alignment. And I needed to know something. If I stepped back into this fight, whose side would she actually stand on? I've learned something about silence. It tells you who people are when pressure closes in. Charles stood rigid near the bar, already calculating damage control. Donors murmured. Phones hovered. The room felt split down the center, and Isabella was standing exactly between both sides. I didn't speak. I watched her, because this wasn't about authority anymore. It was about courage. Charles cleared his throat. We need to move forward with the program. This isn't the time for emotional demonstrations. Emotional demonstrations. The phrase echoed. Isabella's jaw tightened. For a second, I saw the old armor try to return. Efficiency, control, corporate calm. Then she looked at the wall. At Emma's card, at the purple ink bleeding softly into marble, at my daughter standing back with hopeful eyes. Something in her face softened. She stepped forward, not toward Charles, toward the microphone. The room quieted. Her voice was steady but not cold. Before we continue tonight's program, she began, there's something important missing from this wall. A ripple moved through the crowd. This foundation was built on stories, not branding. Charles shifted sharply. Isabella. She didn't look at him. It was built by Eleanor Hayes, she continued, who believed that discomfort creates compassion. Hearing my wife's name in her voice did something to me I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't performance. It was respect. She turned slightly toward Emma, and tonight her daughter reminded us of that. Applause didn't start immediately. It grew slowly, real, unscripted. Charles said nothing, because he couldn't. When Isabella stepped down from the mic, our eyes met. No smile, no triumph, just understanding. I stand with the mission, she said quietly to me. Not the optics. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself in 16 months. Not closure, not healing, possibility. It scared me, because stepping back into leadership meant stepping back into rooms filled with Eleanor's memory. And noticing Isabella meant risking something I wasn't sure I deserved. Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Daddy," she whispered. "Mom would like her." I looked at Isabella again, at the strength under the steel, at the fear she hides behind structure. And for the first time since losing my wife, I didn't feel alone in the room. But that didn't mean I was ready, because honoring the past and risking the future at the same time is the hardest kind of love there is.